Thank you. Thank you all for being here. If we're lucky, the rain will happen while we're inside, and then it'll be over. I got my fingers crossed. Where's Wyatt? Where the heck is he? Thank you, Wyatt. It is so lovely to be here. It is just such a pleasure to be back. And, of course, I'm full of gratitude. I'm thanking Wyatt, who could give lessons to everybody in the world on graciousness. Thank you to Megan and to Adam, who picked up every single ball that I dropped. Thank you to Amy, to Alicia, to Sam, to Dan, to Jonathan, to Hastings, to Kate, to Gwen, to Chris, to Ranger, to Thomas, and to Adam V. You are outstanding. I'm going to be reading short work for you. I just came off of writing 3 books back to back, and I was ready to do something short. And I think these come from Jill. In her last book, Life After Life, she has a character who just gives this terrific rant, and which I have read and reread so many times. It's very, very funny and worth looking at. But what interested me, aside from the fact that it's screamingly funny, is I was just interested in watching what happened when this character stepped out of the narrative moment and talked directly to the reader for a little bit. It does interesting things. The narrative moment gets all foreshortened and kind of crunched up, and the effect is really different. So I started messing around with these. And these are what has emerged. Oh dear, I don't have the right one on top. And where has the right one gone? There we go. When Andrew and I got married in 1992, my then 4-year-old niece cut her hair the day before the wedding. And we have a lot of pictures of what looks like a really adorable, perky boy wearing a pink dress. Last summer, when that same niece got married, her now 4-year-old daughter cut her hair the day she did. And I don't think she knew she was enacting a family legacy. So we have a bunch of pictures of this adorable, perky boy in a pink dress. So I was pondering this idea a little bit, and this is the story that came out of that. It's called Haircut. 2 days ago, my daughter cut her hair off. She is 4. She loosed a cowlick that now curls like plumage from the crown of her head. Adorable. Everything the child touches turns to gold. It seems impossible that she could be the sum of Larry and me. His crabs, my clap. His bad breath, my teeth. Our habit, which brought us together long enough to make Stella and then wonderfully drove us apart. Stella doesn't know about him. Sometimes when Larry comes through town, he and I see each other for old time's sake, when Stella is safe with my sister. My girl is not like me. She reads already and dances. I told Larry about Stella's peeling laughter when she, age 1, encountered a soap bubble, and he said, cheap date. I haven't told him anything about her since. He thinks I'm raising Stella wrong, and he isn't the only one. Janice, my friend at work, asked me just what I'm waiting for. Kids her age go to preschool. They have play dates. You don't need to keep her in Fort Knox. I give her tests, I said. She's scoring off the top on every one of them. What's going to happen when she starts school and finds out she's not the center of the universe? I haven't told Janice yet about the homeschooling. I'll need to get my GED, which I started years ago and put aside when I didn't see the point. Now I hit the books after Stella goes to bed, pulling out sample tests on math and social studies that I hide in a high cabinet during the day. No point in raising questions if Larry comes over. But I've got to be nimble. Stella will catch up with me before I know it. She stampedes into daycare, racing to see her friends and kiss the stuffed moose that is her favorite. She was 3 when Laura, who runs the place, pulled me aside and said, I think she's reading. Her long face looked worried, as if I was going to be mad that she let my brilliant little girl read when I wasn't looking. I didn't teach her, she said. I know, I assured her. Laura doesn't run the kind of daycare where 3-year-olds learn to read, but the kids are clean and she makes them share. Not so bad. Stella can write her name and mine, and she draws the puppy she wants me to get for her. She resets the oven clock when we switch from daylight savings time, and she knows what daylight savings time is. She knows the name of our mailman and our neighbors, and though she doesn't run up to them, I'm careful about what I let her do. She waves and says hello. She charmed Adele Burgess one snowy day when Adele came stumping up the street behind her walker, scowling at the slushy pavement. "The snowflakes are dancing," Stella said, not her usual kind of talk. I thought maybe she was afraid of Adele, and so she let herself sound babyish. Adele was afflicted with everything, bad feet and swollen knees and skin that caught and tore like paper, and she met everyone she saw with a long list of joints that pained her, but this day she smiled at Stella. I didn't know the old bitch could. "You have quite an imagination," Adele said. After she was out of earshot, Stella leaned toward me. "The snowflakes are really just falling, but I thought she might like to hear about dancing." GED sample question. What is an opinion rather than a fact? "It's time for you to meet someone," Janice tells me. "I've got a kid at home. Guys would rather start fresh. You have a pretty smile and long hair. Plenty of guys would give you a chance." Did I say I was interested? "That girl of yours is going to want a daddy or a brother and sister. Maybe you could get a car with air conditioning out of the deal." Got my whole life worked out, don't you? I smile, she smiles back. I have a better life than hers, so she's allowed to be bossy. It was Janice, of all people, who made me quit smoking before Stella was born. I've seen that woman go through 3 packs in a night, but she kept taking cigarettes out of my fingers when we were on breaks. "You don't want a dumb one," she said. Her kids are with their dad's mother. Now she reaches out to touch my hair. "You can borrow my flat iron." For a treacherous second, I remember how it used to be, with music and beer bottles and hot hands against my waist. Stella is used to hearing about Janice the same way I'm used to hearing about Louie at her daycare, who won't drink chocolate milk unless graham crackers are crumbled into it. I don't expect her to think much more when I tell her that Janice and I might go out some night, and Stella would be able to stay with her aunt and watch whatever TV my sister thinks is right for a girl age 4 going on 19. "Is it a date?" Stella asks. "Silly. Janice is my friend. We don't go out on dates." "But you might if you met someone." Her eyes are startlingly clear, the blue of swimming pools. "Louie's mom goes out every Friday. He gets to eat Pop-Tarts." "If a date ever comes up, you can negotiate Pop-Tarts with Aunt Doreen." Stella grins. She loves me to use big words with her, and I haven't stumped her yet, though as she twirls away chanting, "Negotiate," I feel as if I swallowed a cannonball. I can already hear the scorn in Janice's voice when I explain there will be no night out. GED sample question. If a savings account pays 5% simple interest, how much interest in dollars will $4,000 earn in 2 years? I have never seen $4,000 at one time in my life. I make up my own question. If a pack of cigarettes costs $5.30, how much is each cigarette in the pack? Stella storms back into the room, her new cowlick bobbing on top of her head like a decoration. She's holding a book she brought home from daycare, and her finger is stabbing at a word. "What is this?" she demands. "Sound it out," I say automatically. She can get as far as BALL, but the rest stumps her, even though the drawing on the page is crowded with balloons, and for God's sake, it isn't that hard. "Below," she keeps saying. Tears are coming to her eyes. She hates being wrong. "Come on." I put her coat on, and we go outside, Stella not even asking where we were going. Janice is on shift, and she'll give us a balloon for nothing. Sure enough, her fake face breaks into a grin when she sees us. "What happened to that kid's hair?" 10 minutes when Mom wasn't looking, I say. "You want to get some scissors to even it out?" "Nope," I say. "A balloon." "Balloon!" Stella whoops, finally getting it. Janice looks at her oddly, but she inflates a green balloon for her at the helium tank and ties it off with a long ribbon. She's ready to tie the end to Stella's cowlick, but I'm not having it. My girl and I walk home, her pretty face flooded with joy at the new word she owns, and all I can think of is pins, knives, scissors. My rule to myself with these is I'm trying to tell a full story in the fewest words I can. So you can tell me when we're done how well I'm succeeding at this. But it has to be a full story, no fair wimping out behind a pretty image. It's got to actually tell a story. So that's what I'm working with. This next story is both named for and about my hometown of Los Angeles, and the thing I'm describing in here really is a thing. You will be surprised, I was. LA. I was savagely cranky the morning I met my first single bride. My husband Bill had come home at 3 a.m. His job, he got paid for this, was to escort that day's new talent around West Hollywood and Silver Lake, making sure no paparazzo had the chance to snap her sitting alone or looking bored. Plastered, Bill had giggled when he tiptoed into the bedroom, knocking over the lamp and stepping on the cat's tail. And when I snapped at him, he informed me that the new talent didn't whine. "I'll bet she doesn't," I said, and locked my mouth tight. While Bill snored all over the bed, I sat rigid in the living room and watched CSI until it was time to go to work. Seeing the girl waiting for me at the shop's front door, I wasn't as kind as I might have been. She wasn't to blame for the broken lamp or the cat who was probably still under the bed. But when I said, "How can I help you?" I made the question sound like what I really meant. "What the hell do you want?" She looked puffy and bruised, not the kind of rose that usually came into elegant brides surrounded by a bouquet of cooing friends and cousins and mother, stepmother, grandmother, sister, neighbor, dog groomer, manicurist, and spray tan applier. This was LA, and people liked to pile on each other's dreams. "I want this." She held up her phone and showed me a disaster of a dress, layers of frosting white ruffles into which a disdainful model had been inserted. If the soft, terrified girl in front of me had tried to put on this dress, she would dissolve into hyperglycemia. "That's special order," I said. "When is the wedding?" "There isn't a date yet." "How about a venue? This train is awfully formal." She shook her head. I tried for a joke. "You've got a groom, right?" "He's coming. An astrologer told me to be ready." This is a thing. This is a thing. For the second time in 12 hours, I closed my mouth before I could say anything more. The girl was trembling. We still hadn't stepped past the front door. She said, "I've looked at a lot of dresses online, and this is the one I want." "It's important to see how a dress actually looks on you," I said, sinking gratefully into the honed, smooth speech. Bridal shops attract the floridly crazy, and at least once a month we got a girl planning her wedding to Prince Harry, but this girl didn't have a fake British accent or a smile that she flashed for invisible photographers. Nevertheless, she looked wounded, and I blazed with quick fury at the careless men I imagined who had created this shaking child. "Would you let me show you some different styles just so you can see them on? We can take as long as you want. I want you to have the chance to be surprised, just like your husband will." "I already know what I want, but we can try on dresses if you don't have anything better to do with your time." "We have all the time in the world," I said gently. I hadn't learned yet that the single brides don't need special handling. No matter how much they tremble, they are bulletproof. I thought that girl was a one-off, bearing her sad, unique brand of delusion until the next one came in a few months later, and 3 more since her. Girls wearing engagement rings they bought themselves and carrying fabric swatches and die charts in their purses. Weddings take planning. Venues are sometimes booked 2 years ahead. No sane girl is going to leave the most important day of her life to chance. "Where are you going to live after the wedding?" I asked another girl. The single bride shrugged. "We'll figure something out." She savored "we," a pronoun she didn't yet have much experience with. Bill explains to me every night, Bill explains to me after every night he comes in late, which is every night, how nothing happened between him and the new talent. It's his job to escort her and make sure her needs are tended to. It's his job to make her look happy in the brilliant Hollywood light. "You wanted to move to LA," he said. Sounding wounded is his long suit. That was my mistake. Now I want to move somewhere sane. What would I do there? Good question. LA fits him like an Italian suit. I'm the one with, he once told a laughing room full, Midwestern values. I grew up in Ohio, like him, and went to a university there, unlike him. We got married in front of a judge, which my mother said wasn't a wedding at all. I wanted to come to a city. Now Bill's the happy one. I don't want a June wedding, my latest single bride tells me. Her tattoos peek colorfully through the lace across her shoulders. June brides are a cliche. I don't want to have to share my day. This one's name is Isabel. Her cake will have musical notes made of lilac fondant. A backup singer, Isabel is looking for a groom who plays the drums because drummers have great arms and are more trustworthy than guitarists. What will you do if you don't find one? I say around the pins in my mouth. I guess I could go to Nashville, but we'd have to come back here for the wedding. I put a deposit on the reception hall. He might have his own ideas. There are reception halls in Nashville, too. This is my special day, not his. For a moment, I think she's showing a flash of humor, but she is studying her reflection, her mouth firm. I grew up in Omaha. I didn't come to LA to be like everybody else. You sound amazingly like my husband. Does he know any drummers? My psychic told me to ask everyone I meet. What else did your psychic tell you? Ask for everything you want. Otherwise, you'll always be settling. There's no reason not to have everything you dream of. Which could be kind of the standard of Los Angeles. I'm kneeling at her feet, gazing up at her, my mouth full of pins. From this vantage, she looks gigantic, a massive, frumpy goddess. Can we let this out a little across the neck, she says, and I nod and get to work. That night, Bill is actually home for dinner, a once-a-week event. When he comes in the door, he looks tired, but in his peg jeans and schoolboy blazer, he also looks adorable and about 14 years old. I feel 108. We need to talk, he says. Do you know any drummers? I'm not even going to ask. My client wants a drummer. She says she can have anything she wants if she asks for it. Ha, $1 million, he says. $2 million and a Beamer. Quit thinking so small, he says. A Bentley and the house to go with it. He's finally stepped away from the door and poured himself onto the couch. It isn't the conversation he'd meant to have, but he's always taken the opportunities that present themselves. It's why I asked him to marry me. I asked, and he did. A plane, he says. Where would we go? I know my mistake as soon as the words are out of my mouth. Who said anything about we? He smiles. The LA sunset floods the room in golden light. My friend Juliana, who teaches at Alfred University, also directs the Young Writers program there. And what that means is that high school-age students come to Alfred, just like the one here, for a week and take classes in fiction and poetry writing. Juliana was talking with her dean as this was getting set up for this year's session, and the dean had the idea that a terrific icebreaker exercise for a group of self-conscious, overly sensitive teenagers would be an exercise, some of you may have heard of this, where everybody in the room gives a compliment out loud to everybody else in the room. Do you find this as blood-curdling as I do? I just think this is an awful idea. So Juliana did her job and talked the dean out of this idea, and then furthermore did her job and shared the story with me, and this is what came out of it. Exercise. I like your accent. You have really nice eyes. You seem really smart. No, she doesn't. She seems dumb as a rock, and I'm just about ready to say so. We freshmen have had group building exercises all morning with pizza vouchers going to the person who memorizes the most names or correctly links the right person with the right hometown. Now we're responsible for giving compliments to every single person in our 15-person group. We're lined up as if ready to meet a firing squad. The girl next to me wears sparkly barrettes. Turn-ons include kittens and hot cocoa in front of a blazing fire. The complimenting girl has almost made it down the line to me. She started strong, but she's losing steam. You have cool shoes. Then, I like your backpack. Now, face to face, girl to girl, I bet you get a lot of good grades. The next complimenter has already started, overlapping the first one. The people running this thing, probably sociology students itching to put their new skills to work, didn't plan out their time very well, and we've only got 10 minutes for 225 compliments. You'd think upperclassmen would have done the arithmetic. The compliments take longer now because we're not supposed to repeat and the easy ones are disappearing fast. Your voice is nice. That's a cool bracelet. I saw you running this morning. You went really fast. The complimenter is supposed to hold the gaze of the complimentee. How can the sociology majors think that this will build group spirit? If I see any of these people 6 months from now, I'll remember the long gaze and the lies, and I'll hide. Your shirt's a nice color, the complimenter says to sparkly barrettes. Turn-ons include kittens and hot sex in front of a blazing fire. Your smile looks like you're keeping secrets, the complimenter tells me, and one of the sociology majors says, that's not a compliment. Yes, it is, I say. The two who are finished take their place at the end of the line. They've done the hard part, but they still have to be complimented. They're whispering and looking over at the corner where the sociology majors made us put our phones in a box. The compliments, more and more stiff, tip over like dominoes, all coercion and no truth, like conversation over Christmas dinner. You have nice earrings. I like your shirt. You can go beyond appearances, one of the sociology majors calls out. I'll bet you're a nice person, the complimenter promptly says, and I have to give it to him for quickness. To sparkly barrettes, he says, I'll bet you're gentle around old people. Turn-ons include kittens and hot sex in front of a blazing house fire. To me, he says, I'll bet you're not gentle around old people, and the sociology majors make him do it again, even though I feel totally complimented. I'll bet you have good music. He gazes at me, just like he's supposed to. Shit, one of the others says, that's a good one. No, it isn't. All morning, I've stayed well under the radar, not just of the sociology majors, but of all my new classmates. This is my skill. I can disappear in plain sight. If a picture is taken of us, something that seems dismally likely, it will seem as if there are 14 people in the group, none of them me. Now I've got my co-freshmen assessing me, and I need to be careful. I do have a lot of good music. We're over our 10 minutes, and everybody's getting restless. The sociology majors have had to swat one of the guys away from the box with the phones. We're all hungry, and there's a smell of tomato sauce from the cafeteria next door. You have good color sense. Nice job with your hair. I can tell you like green. What qualifies as a compliment anyway? A mere fact shouldn't count. The longer this goes on, the more sharply I see every one of us, sunburned knees and makeup lines, and the one guy with really nice hands, and for the love of Christ, it's Sparkly Barrett's turn to compliment. She giggles. Are you a design major? Because the way you put those bracelets together totally rocks. Are you an engineering major? Lucky you. You're actually going to be employed. This is like Guess Your Astrological Sign, college edition. I can't blame her for finding an angle and working it. I'm just surprised she was able to do it. She's good at maintaining eye contact, too. Are you a psych major? She says to me. I'm not any major yet. I haven't even had a class. You look like you know things, she says, her eyes boring into mine. Turn-ons include kitten-eating snakes and house fires. I know I wish this exercise was over. Well, yeah. She moves on to the dude next to me, leaving the rest of her comment unsaid. Do you think you're special? Kittens chopped up by chainsaws. Rape. Conflagration. Now it's my turn, and there are no compliments left in the world. People's eyes are red from so much staring, and I've never felt so visible in my life. Everybody wants me to hurry up already. It smells like lasagna next door. But I can't think of a damn thing to say. The girl before me cracks a little smile. Hurry up, she says. You're very punctual, I say, kissing goodbye to any hope of her ever making friends. Next, you don't feel the need to be too neat. You know what's in fashion. I'll bet you have a dog. Eventually, it's Sparkly Barrettes. I say, you would have found room on a lifeboat from the Titanic. I love that movie. She leans forward and squeezes my hand. Do you really think so? Totally. Her face is in astonishment. It might actually be emitting light. Best compliment ever. Gently, I try to get my hand back. That's great, really. I didn't think you'd be good at this, but you're the best one here. See what a good compliment can do, says one of the sociology majors. Is anybody else hungry, says the dude next to me. I pry my hand back and finish up the line with rerun compliments. Everybody's sick of the exercise now, and we're all starving. But Sparkly Barrettes is bearing down on me before we leave the room. I missed your name at the beginning, she says. Eileen. She smiles. Hey, Eileen, when the ship starts to go, I'm taking you with me. This next one is a two-parter, but I think I may just read the first part. Comfort. I think this will probably become clear as we go along, but all of the recent stories about shooters in the United States created this. Comfort. Just tell the truth, they say, and I can't even count how many things are wrong with that sentence. There are a lot of truths, and most of them aren't on speaking terms with the others. True, I am a man who killed a child. My family and friends don't believe that, pointing out that all my life I've liked kids. Also true and irrelevant. People bring up the stuff that they want to matter. Sam and Mark love you. They still talk about the kite you made them. We'll fight this, my sister says. She thinks there's a solution, but for there to be a solution, there has to be a problem. I had never held a gun before. That thing people say about how a gun is surprisingly heavy, that's true. I fiddled with the trigger, then lifted the gun two-handed like cops on TV, sighted a little boy kicking dirt behind the dugout, and fired. I was as surprised as anyone when the bullet went off. It turns out I'm a good shot. The boy's mother says I am a monster. True. The prosecutor says I have no concept of the value of human life. Not true. The value of that boy's life is my life, to the penny. It was an accident, my sister wails. Why should that make any difference? Before this happened, I was a flight attendant. The point of the job is not to fulfill customers' needs, but to anticipate them. The blanket, the cargo space, the air sickness bag fast. What if I'm the one getting airsick? Somebody asked in training school. You get airsick on your own time, the teacher said. So we put our needs last? You're flight attendants. You don't have needs. Other people groaned, but I smiled. For the first time in my life, I was right at home. I know how to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. I can swim with a baby on my back. I can splint a broken leg and tie a tourniquet, and I know how to make 3 oxygen masks support 5 people. My job is to save lives, but nobody at 30,000 feet wants to think about battling for an oxygen mask, and so I hand out pretzels and squat in the aisle, grinning at the toddler furious to find herself imprisoned on a slightly grubby airplane seat. I used to do these things before my airline let me go. I'm sure you understand, the supervisor said, and he was right. I had never done anything to hurt anyone, not even when my first boyfriend stabbed the upholstery of my car with a 12-inch knife, or when another boyfriend gave me cocaine laced with laxative and then locked me in the bedroom. I just wanted proof you were human, he said, after I cleaned the room, I let him stay for another 5 months because he had no place else to go, and it didn't seem to make much difference in the end. I was the guy who was too nice until I murdered a little boy. Don't say it like that, my sister snaps. What did you think would happen when you squeezed the trigger, the DA asks. I was at my nephew's baseball game, wandering behind the bleachers during an endless inning, foul after foul after foul. The afternoon had turned spongy with boredom and humidity, and I felt trapped inside of a dream of a life parallel to mine, one that circled around baseball games and coolers and a single half-full bottle of rye at home in the cabinet above the refrigerator. One of the dads motioned to me, and I went to him. That's my training. When somebody calls, you go. Check this out, he said, pulling a pistol from his jacket pocket. Gray, with lighter gray around the casing. Desert Eagle 50 caliber Action Express, he said. At a Little League game? Nobody needs to know. His eyes were bright as he raised and lowered the gun, not sighting through it, just hefting it, excited with the feel in his hand. I knew before he asked that he was going to let me touch it. Did you know the gun was loaded? Everybody asked, but the question never occurred to me. When you pick up a gun in a dream, you don't ask if it's loaded. You didn't know, my sister says. The ordeal has been hard on her. Her pretty face has gone muddy, and she hasn't gotten her hair done in weeks. I see her husband looking at the line of gray at her hairline. No one can blame you for what you didn't know, she says, her voice shrill with repetition. That's the stupidest thing she said yet. What kind of idiot pulls a trigger and expects nothing to happen? My old boyfriend texted me and said I had set back the cause of gay rights 10 years because even a decent homo would know how to handle a gun. The man at the game, the gun's owner, said the action on it is smooth, hardly no kick. I don't mean that he was encouraging me to shoot. That was my own idea. I was supposed to fly to Chicago that night. My suitcase was already packed. In Chicago, I knew where I would stay for the night, how early I'd have to get up for the flight back the next day. I knew how many bottles were supposed to be on the airline bar cart and how many I could palm to help me get to sleep. I knew a number I could call if I didn't want to be alone. I knew this man beside me under the bleachers would shove me to the ground if I reached out to touch his chest at the same time that he was putting a damn gun in my hands. After I shot the boy, a moment passed before I heard the screams and felt the gun ripped out of my hands. The day's spongy haziness vanished into stark, dazzling light, and in the shining split second when nothing had still changed, I looked at my sister, her face brilliant. She shook her head again and again, no, 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 no. Then the next part started. Oh, actually, you know what? Comfort 2. Well, nothing to prepare you, nothing to say. We're here for you, my friends repeat, and I hear the anguish in their voices. They mean the best, they mean love, but Jesus, they need to go away. You can't be alone now, my mother says, and then amends it to, you shouldn't be alone, which is righter, but there's only one person I want to be with, and he's gone. I did everything exactly right, every step by the book. Bobby had no idea what even my tits looked like until our wedding night, something we made tense jokes about later. At least they got big when I was pregnant. He liked that. I quit my job and painted the nursery a sweet green, a color that would welcome the 5 children I planned on. Bobby was doing well at the dealership, meeting his quotas and getting his bonuses. I saw life stretching out like a wide, pretty pasture without so much as a stone to get in my shoe. That's how you think when you're young. After Jason was toddling, I saw Bobby's mouth tighten when I talked about the next child. I went to Victoria's Secret and bought a teddy that the salesgirl said was perfect for little girls like me. The ruffles are your friends. They give you the look of fullness right where it counts. Shyly, I pulled it on that night when we put Jason down, and Bobby blushed. He kissed my forehead and left the room. When he moved in with his massively titted girlfriend, he was good to me. He made sure that his child support payments came in time to cover the mortgage, and when I had trouble finding a job at first, he asked his friends to look out for me. He had a lot of friends. He's a decent man, I said. You need so much more, Mama said. She gestured at my boy, frowning at the pyramid of Legos he'd built, trying to see where he could fit his toy truck. I've got riches. Mama's face softened, but she still said, no, you don't. When Jason turned 4, he vandalized our neighbor's iris bed to bring me a bouquet. At 6, he brought me breakfast in bed, a microwave cheese sandwich. He wouldn't go to sleep unless I came into his room, smoothed his hair, and told him I loved him. When his teacher told him to draw a picture of the person he liked best in the world, he drew a figure with long red fingernails and a pennant of red hair with my name in his brand new printing. I don't look anything like that, I said, and he said, that's what you really look like underneath. My son was the only male I knew who looked at me. Every day, men came into the bank and didn't ever notice the flat-chested gal counting 20s. Don't you meet anyone at that place, Mama said, and I told her no. Easier than telling her that I met people every day, over and over. Exactly once did a man ask my name. He said, Roberta, that's pretty. A month or 2 later, he came back needing a cashier's check for $300, and he asked my name. Roberta, that's pretty. Named after my dad. I saved some boy from being named Robert Jr. Jason thought that Robert was the funniest name in the world, so I threatened him with it all the time. I'm your mother. I gave you your name. I can change it. Just don't call me Robert, he would yell, delighted. He used to yell. We used to collapse in laughter at the kitchen table, one or the other whispering, Robert, to set us off again. We did that before Jason was shot to death at a baseball game by a gay man holding a gun for the first time in his life. He didn't even know him, people said. What difference would that have made? Dead is dead, a sentence people don't want to hear. Some others. God doesn't have a plan. Jason is in a box. Thank you for coming. Please leave. I didn't mean to be ugly, but there are no words that help, and twice I wound up having to comfort a visitor who couldn't bear my tragedy. God doesn't give us more than we can handle, my mother's friend said. I scrounged up a thin smile for her and said, I'm still standing. God has a plan. I sent her home with a slice of pound cake that someone else had brought. And then I closed the house. I called Mama once a day to let her know I was breathing, but otherwise I didn't open the blinds or answer the door. I had enough food in the refrigerator to see me through a month, and I ate the bits I liked, mostly the brownie edges, and let the rest spoil. I listened to the silence, training myself not to listen for my boy. Day after day, I laid down on the grief and rolled on it as if I were rolling on broken glass, trying to get all of the hurt over at once. It took me a while to learn that glass keeps cutting. That's its nature, like its skin's nature to flinch from the cut. The cutting never stops, or the hurting. The night after I figured that out, I raised the blinds and went out for Diet Coke, the first thing I'd run through. I attended every minute of the trial, conducted not so that we could discover who had killed Jason. Every mother at that game had video on her phone, and I could see my son killed from 40 different angles, but so the jury could decide on a sentence. The killer was a pleasant-looking guy with sandy hair and tended hands. His eyes looked dead, Mama said, but I didn't see that. To me, he looked nice. During the trial, through days of testimony, he cried. Mama was enraged. How about crying before you pull the trigger, gay boy? How dare you come in here now and act sorry? Maybe he is, I said. Don't you even start, she snarled. For 3 solid weeks, the length of the trial and deliberation, she didn't say a civil word to anybody. Then the killer, Jeffrey, I knew his name by now, got life, no parole, and Mama fell against me and screamed like an animal. A second round of brownies and visitors has started since then, people eager to share my pain. The church choir director says, I can at least sleep now, knowing that he's locked up, even though jail's too good for him. She leans forward. He's probably getting just what he wants in there. Maybe he is. At least you saw justice served. At least he's locked up. Now you can get on with your life. My life has nothing to do with him, I said. The ones who are paying attention get careful then and start asking if I'm taking care of myself and maybe need to see a doctor. There's no shame in a little Xanax these days. I haven't become one of those forgive everybody types. I would cheerfully send Jeffrey to the electric chair if I could backwind the clock and reclaim my boy. But watching my friends and neighbors drip poison while they talk about Jeffrey leaves me feeling worse, and I've started taking walks in the late afternoon when people tend to come by. I've closed my Facebook account and wipe out a lot of emails. I'm used to a house now that is so still I could hear a ghost footstep if only it would come. Mama would be alarmed if she heard me talking about ghosts. She's already afraid that I've imperiled my immortal soul by saying goddamn when the minister visited. She doesn't like to admit that a life can happen with no instruction manual, and I'm in it. I live in a universe that is boundless and godless and contains only me. It's not as terrible as you might think. The worst thing that can possibly happen has happened, and now I'm safe. I think that if I told that to Jeffrey, he would understand. Not that I'll do it. It's just the kind of idea that keeps me going late at night in my quiet house. All right. Two more. All right. If somebody were to come to me and say, I'm thinking about marrying a poet, I'm not sure I would necessarily say no, but there are times when it's darn handy, and there are times when it's annoying, and there are times when those things come right together. I was working on this next story for months and couldn't get it right, and just was cranky and frustrated, and showed a draft to Andrew, and he said, you know that Anthony Hecht poem, A Hill? You might want to look at that. I said, I am writing stories, not poems. And then about 2 days later, he said, have you looked at that Hecht poem yet? And I said, look, the whole point of these is that they're not poems, they are stories. And then like a day later, he sent me a link to the poem, and he was exactly right. Not only was it the thing I should have been looking at, I kind of think it was in the back of my mind when I started working on this in the first place. So the superb poem that this somewhat builds on is Anthony Hecht's A Hill. My version is called Cat. My mother's thick hair tumbles over her shoulders, and her body is taut as a heron's. She's making her way across hot Piazza San Marcos with quick, annoyed steps, sliding past pods of noisy tourists and vendors. If someone asks her a question, she will answer in Italian, which I do not understand. It's rare to be able to watch her, and I'm staring from my spot across the plaza. The sizzling wind molds her skirt to her long legs, her blouse to her shoulders. Her face is flawlessly impatient. She could be on her way to an assignation. She could be preparing to buy oranges. Before she's halfway across the dazzling square, a man steps in her way. She listens to him for a moment, then continues walking. He puts his hand on her arm, and she shakes him off as if she were shaking off rain. He is still talking. People watching laugh. He catches up with her and grabs her silky skirt at the waist, leaving a mark. I stand up to go to her, my chair's aluminum legs stuttering on the flagstones. Before I can get close, a second man arrives, tall, like her, holding a necklace that catches the light. She dismisses him, too, in a hissing sentence. Her calf muscle flexes as she drums her high heel, Milanese shoes, invoking raw silk blouses and high-strung sports cars. Though I'm close now, she doesn't glance at me. Only when a third man arrives, tethered to an animal on a leash, does my mother stop looking angry. The animal is a lynx, maybe, or an ocelot. Its muscular tail is almost as thick as my wrist and swings as if the tail itself were scanning for prey. The cat shows no interest in the people around it, even the sticky-handed child following too close behind. This cat could take off one of those sticky hands with an indifferent swipe of a heavy, soft paw. My mother nods at the cat. She looks barely tamed herself, her body an undulant muscle in the brilliant sun. It isn't right for me to look at her like this, but for years I've wanted to see her palm back her rich hair. Her hair was thin. She spent a lifetime wrestling with it. The man with the necklace is talking again in an urgent voice. Maybe his family is about to be displaced or his son let out of prison. My mother is more interested in the cat and does not change her expression when the animal leaps up and knocks the necklace from the man's hands, a careless claw raking the inside of his wrist. An instant holds before his arm jets blood, spraying his face and linen shirt. The cat tastes the necklace, then drops it to the flagstones. The man wails, and two horrified women rush toward him. My mother turns to the man holding the cat's leash. Prossimo, she says, as if a conversation had been interrupted. Bear with me. Che cosa avete bisogno? I'm furious not to know what she is saying. The blood of the collapsed man froths over his arm, but all I care about is the cat batting the glittering necklace over the hot gray flagstones. I have to force myself not to reach out as if it were a tabby. My mother says something sharp, and the animal rumbles deep in its throat. I don't know whether it is pleased or the opposite, but my mother speaks again, heedless. She was famous for her softness, her body, her voice. The men who liked her liked whipped cream desserts and approved of a woman who would order the first dish on the menu. Anything is fine, really. There's nothing I especially want. By the time I was 5 years old, I'd learned that wanting nothing was the same as wanting everything. Either the veal or the chicken. I don't want anything special, she said, and I felt her want something much more than veal or chicken. I brought her a picture when I was a little girl, and then as the years passed, books, paintings, food, clothes, a car. How nice, she said every time. I should have brought her a cat. In Venice, my mother says something curt and takes the leash. The cat is carrying the necklace in its mouth, the jeweled end hanging out like a mouse tail. The first man, who left the mark on her skirt, starts talking again. I don't need to speak Italian to know he's repeating himself, dejected. Whatever he wants, it will not be coming. My mother turns for the first time toward me. And you? That. I nod at the cat. My mother shrugs, but she can't be surprised. I have always loved animals, I tell her, and for the first time she looks indecisive. I say, do you know who I am? She smiles, snaps her fingers, and the cat looks at me, growling and tensing before it jumps at my face. She is dead, and I can imagine her any way I want. All right. One more. This is a little bit different and is addressed to someone in particular. I think it will become pretty clear who that is. Because you promised to be with me even to the end of time, because you told me to be still and know who you are, because it was said you would lead me through the shadow of the valley of death and take away my fear, but I still have my fear, because you promised me repose, because I have not been made new, because I still reach for the glass every morning, because you promised me joy, because you make promises you don't keep. Because when I ask where the rent money will come from, you say, how glorious is the daybreak. When I remind you that my savings have dwindled to pennies, you say, it is good that there is music. Because you expect me to be a mystic, but did not make me a mystic. I have clung to your promises until my hands ache. When the day comes that I open them, I'm pretty sure I'll discover that they are empty. Because destruction might pave the way to salvation, but salvation can be destroyed again. You have lifted me up, as you promised. But salvation has set me swinging on a trapeze, looking for hands to clasp, because those hands might come, and they might not. Because if I am left to fall, everyone will understand that being left breathless and broken on the tent floor was good for me. Because everything you do or don't do is good for me. Because you promise to break and remake us when we go wrong, and because you've made us so that we don't want to be broken, and we often go wrong. Because last night I brought home a woman who smelled like olives, and whose touch on my wrist made me feel electrified. Because I wanted to shout in gratitude that there was such a woman, you made her, and I met her. Because she went home with me, and because we were shaking so hard when we touched each other that we both dropped our glasses, which held nothing but Sprite, a point you should appreciate. Because she is married, which I knew right after she looked around the bar, then looked at me and said, neither of us should be here. I told her the truth. I come here every night. If I can't sit in a bar, then I can't go to parties, and then I won't be able to go to restaurants. I won't be able to let people come to my apartment. Before long, I'll be curled up all alone, and then the only solution will be to come here. So it's all about choice, she said. Mostly, I said. Then I'm choosing to sit with you, she said. Move over. Because you created choice. Because life is an endless succession of choose, 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 and eventually we're going to choose wrong and discover you waiting at the threshold of that wrong choice. Even till the end of time. Because your sure patience might be the most threatening promise ever made. Because I've been alone so long. Because I was supposed to be alone, and being alone was good for me. Because I have been purified by solitude. Because you also created a sense of humor, which has come in handy. Because I laughed when we dropped our glasses, and so did she. I laughed again when I pulled her against me, and she did not laugh then. Because my thoughts run to her like water racing downhill. Because she is married. Because she sang along with the song on my radio and knew every word. Because she knows how to sing harmony. Because when she was little, she had a dog named Skipper. Because she is married. Because you are so elusive on some subjects and so icily clear on others. Because your forgiveness comes with riders, like the contracts that used to come that I used to pretend to read, but rarely got past the third whereas. Because you will say, you forgive any truly penitent heart, but that penance must nevertheless be enacted. Because I am not penitent. Because I want to call her. Now and now. Because her husband's name is Gary, and I've never met a Gary I didn't like. Because she did not want to tell me about the accident, but I kept asking until she told me. Because people can fall from rooftops while doing nothing more exceptional than cleaning gutters. Because home maintenance can create a man who does not remember his wife's name, but remembers how to fumble for her waist when she passes with a pile of laundry. Because at first she leaned into his grasp, thinking that his body might remember her even if his mouth could not produce her name. She leaned into him until she couldn't lean anymore. She did not tell me this. She fell silent, her hard gaze directed at the table and her mouth soft. Because you gave her a soft mouth. Because comfort is sometimes offered and is a kindness. Because my heart swelled at her sorrow. Because you gave me a heart that would do that. Because I have entered a room with only one exit, a room you allowed me to find. Because I can see the future so clearly it might as well be the past. Because people who come together out of famished need gnaw each other to pieces. It will be no time before I resent her for my helplessness before her need, as she will resent me. Because you have made the journey from joy to weariness a trapdoor drop, and because the early claims on us are the ones that endure. Because I am rushing toward my own sadness and hers, and I will not even slow my step. Because you will be with me in my suffering. Because suffering is what you made me for. My heart will break, and I will turn to you, because you are the only one to turn to. Because you made the rules. Because in the heartbreak I already feel you will be saving me. I do not want to be saved. Because my desires do not matter. Because when the time comes, I will be looking for you, the last one I want to see. Thank you.